Lyra Calder stood on the wide stone platform with the wind brushing dust against her boots, and the voices of the Varkun rising like a storm around her. The aliens circled her with their tall, armored bodies and narrow, glimmering eyes, studying her as if she were a strange animal that had wandered into their city by accident. She stayed calm. She had learned long ago that losing her temper only gave them more reason to laugh. Today, they had gathered for one reason: the tool in her hands. It looked simple enough. A slender device, the length of her forearm, full of curved metal plates and flexible joints that shimmered faintly in the harsh sunlight. To Lyra, it was a masterpiece of engineering. To the Varkun, it was a joke. The closest warrior, a broad-shouldered male with faded blue stripes painted across his armor, pointed at the tool and let out a loud, cough-like laugh. "This is what the human brings? A stick with hinges?" His voice echoed across the courtyard, and the others joined in with their own mocking sounds. Lyra didn't answer. She simply held the tool at her side, fingers tight but steady. The device was heavier than it looked, but she carried it easily. She had designed it that way. A group of Varkun younglings pushed to the front, eager for more entertainment. They were smaller than the adults, but still taller than Lyra. Their pale eyes shined with mischief as they began chanting in their native tongue, a short, rhythmic phrase she had come to know well during her months of captivity. The translation was simple. The human brought a useless tool. The chant spread through the crowd. It didn't hurt anymore. Not in the way it had at the beginning. Humans were rare here, and humans who worked with machines were considered a curiosity. But curiosity had long since turned into ridicule. The Varkun believed every tool must be a weapon or a show of dominance. Anything else was pointless to them. Lyra had stopped trying to explain long ago. Captain Jorvac, the one assigned as her overseer, stepped forward. His armor was decorated with obsidian plates, showing that he had seen many battles. He scratched the bottom of his chin as he stared at her creation. "Human," he said, "you told us you could build something valuable. You said you would show the clans what you are capable of, and this is what you present?" Lyra met his gaze. "Yes." He raised a brow ridge. "What is its purpose?" "I'll show you when the time is right," she said. "She hides the truth," one of the warriors muttered. "She knows it has no use. Or she fears we will break it," another added. Lyra ignored the comments. She had learned there was no point defending herself. Words did nothing here. The Varkun respected results, not explanations. Jorvac circled her slowly, his heavy steps creating deep marks in the dust. "Human engineering is strange," he said. "You shape things in ways that look fragile. Even your ships, when we captured them, seemed built for beauty rather than strength." Lyra bit her tongue. Human ships were flexible, aerodynamic, efficient. Varkun ships were massive metal blocks with engines attached almost carelessly. Built to intimidate rather than excel. She had seen both in action. She preferred the human way, of course, but arguing that would get her nowhere. Jorvac stopped in front of her and folded his arms. "You are permitted to build your inventions only because the elders wish to understand your species better. But if this," he pointed at the device, "is the best you can offer, then you have wasted their time." The insult stung a little this time, but she didn't show it. Behind him, the younglings continued chanting. Their voices rose and fell like waves, the rhythm blending with the low hum of the city's machinery in the distance. Varkun architecture was a strange mix of ancient stone and advanced technology. Towers carved with centuries-old symbols rose beside glowing energy conduits. Tradition and innovation existed side by side, though rarely in harmony. Lyra had grown familiar with the layout of the stronghold, but she had never quite adjusted to the atmosphere. It was a world defined by strength. Every Varkun she met seemed to carry the same belief: that power came from dominating enemies, conquering territory, and maintaining fear. She had built her tool specifically to challenge that belief, but not openly. Not yet. Jorvac finally waved his hand, dismissing her. "Take it back to your workshop. Maybe you will find a use for it there, even if none exists here." He turned to leave, but then looked back at her briefly. Human tools are too gentle, too complicated. The clans will never accept them. Lyra gave a small, polite nod, even though she disagreed with every word. The crowd began to disperse, some still laughing, some shaking their heads. A few warriors stayed behind, exchanging jokes in their language. Lyra walked away quietly, cradling the device close to her chest. They acted like she couldn't understand their tongue, but she understood more than they realized. Enough to know they would be talking about this fiasco for days. Her workshop was located at the far end of the stronghold, near the cliffside. It had once been a storage room for spare armor, but the Varkun rarely used tools outside of weapons, so turning it into a crafting space had been easy. As she walked through the long corridors, the stronghold's stone walls changed from dark volcanic rock to smooth alloy panels. Glowing lines of energy pulsed along the floor, guiding her path. She passed several Varkun guards, all of whom took a moment to look at her tool again. Some looked confused, others amused. One warrior even held up his own massive weapon, a great staff made of carved bone and metal, and compared its size to the device in her hands. His laughter echoed loudly in the hallway. Lyra kept walking. When she finally reached the workshop, she closed the door behind her and let out a slow breath. Even after all these months, she still felt the pressure of their stares when she walked through the stronghold. She set the tool carefully on her workbench. The room was dimly lit, with only a single window letting sunlight spill across the floor. The air smelled faintly of heated metal and fresh oil. Every piece of equipment she used had been scavenged from broken machinery, old armor, and whatever scraps the Varkun considered worthless. They didn't understand how much could be done with worthless parts. Lyra ran her fingers across the device. The metal felt smooth, almost warm. She checked the flexible joints, making sure everything remained aligned. Each piece was perfectly fitted. Each plate slid exactly as it should. She remembered the day she found the raw material. The Varkun had brought her along to study a battlefield where they had won a major victory several years earlier. She was supposed to take notes on how their weapons operated, but instead she had noticed something half buried in the dirt. A long, curved piece of hardened material that looked different from the other debris. It had faint patterns along its surface, almost biological. She had picked it up out of curiosity, and the warriors had shrugged when she asked what it was. Leftover from the old battle, they said. Probably a fragment of armor from the fallen warlord. His remains were scattered. They didn't bother collecting it. Their traditions treated their warlords as legends, not bodies. Once a leader fell, the next one took power, and the cycle continued. The Varkun had thrown the fragment onto the transport pile without a second glance. Lyra had quietly retrieved it later. It wasn't armor. Not even close. She had realized it the moment she examined it under proper lighting. The structure was too detailed, too organic. It was a piece of vertebra hardened by the Varkun's unique biology, strong enough to be used as a protective material. They had abandoned it as worthless. She had turned it into something else entirely. As she thought about this, she heard a soft knock on her door. She straightened, quickly covering the tool with a cloth. "Come in," she said. The door opened and Rokma stepped inside. He was different from the others, older, quieter, more observant. His armor was worn but well cared for, and his eyes always seemed to notice details other warriors missed. He approached the workbench slowly. "Human," he said, in a tone that lacked mockery. "The others found your demonstration amusing." He paused, but I did not. Lyra studied his face. "Why?" "That material," he said softly, nodding toward the covered tool. "It is familiar." Her heartbeat quickened, but she kept her voice neutral. "Is it? I have lived long enough to recognize our own history when I see it." He replied. "Tell me, where did you find it?" Lyra considered her words carefully. She had no intention of lying, but she also wasn't ready to reveal the full truth. "Not yet. Your people left it behind after the battle," she said. Rokma's eyes narrowed slightly. He wanted more information, but she could see he sensed that she wouldn't give it. After a long pause, he nodded. Very well, keep your secrets for now. But know this, human objects hold memory, and some memories are heavier than others. He turned and left the workshop without another word. Lyra exhaled slowly after he was gone. She looked down at the tool beneath the cloth. Soon, she thought. Soon the Varkun would understand its purpose. And when they did, everything about the way they saw humans and themselves would begin to change. The morning began with a low humming sound that traveled across the stronghold like a whisper. Lyra woke to it instantly. She had learned to recognize every sound in the Varkun city, the grinding of their lift platforms, the growl of their heavy doors, even the distant calls of their aerial beasts, but this sound was different. It was sharper, quicker, almost like an alarm. She rose from her small cot and crossed the room to the narrow window. Outside, the bright orange sun had just begun rising over the rocky horizon, painting the landscape with dusty light. The stronghold below was already active. Warriors hurried between towers, carrying supplies and checking equipment. Even the usually calm energy conduits along the walls flickered with a faster rhythm, as if reacting to the tension spreading through the air. Lyra tightened her grip on the window frame. Something was wrong. She dressed quickly and slipped her tool into a hidden compartment beneath her clothing. The device was not fully complete, but it was ready. Ready enough for what was coming. She could feel it. When she stepped into the hallway, the atmosphere felt thicker than usual. Varkun warriors moved with unusual purpose, speaking in quick, clipped phrases. A few even brushed past her without the usual mocking glance, which was strange enough to confirm her suspicion. Trouble was approaching. As she walked toward the central courtyard, she saw Captain Jorvac standing near a group of officers. His voice carried across the stones as he discussed border patrol routes. His expression was tense, his armor already polished for potential conflict. Lyra had never seen him look unsettled. She approached cautiously. Jorvac noticed her before she reached him and gestured for her to stop a short distance away. "Human," he said. "This is not the time to ask questions." Lyra looked around at the hurried preparations. Something happened. "A rival clan has been moving closer to our territory," Jorvac said, his tone firm. "They have attacked 2 outposts overnight." Lyra felt a chill climb up her spine. "Are they coming here?" "We are not certain yet," he replied. "But we prepare for all possibilities." Another officer approached, whispering something to Jorvac. His expression darkened more. When he turned back to Lyra, his eyes were sharper than usual. "You will stay in your workshop today," he ordered. "Do not wander the stronghold. Do not involve yourself in our defense." Lyra held her breath for a moment, debating whether to push back. She knew something he didn't, something the Varkun leadership was quick to overlook. Their border defenses were outdated, their patrol routes predictable, their energy reserves low after a long season of storms. She had tried to explain all of this weeks earlier. They hadn't listened. "I can help," she said quietly. Jorvac's jaw tightened. "We do not require human assistance." Lyra wanted to argue, but she understood that pushing too hard would only make him ban her from the workshop, or worse, confiscate her tool. So she simply nodded and stepped back. As she turned to leave, she noticed another figure standing in the shadows near a tall column. Rokma. His calm eyes watched her with subtle curiosity. He gave the smallest nod, as if telling her to stay patient. She nodded back. Her workshop door slid shut behind her, and she leaned against it, closing her eyes. The atmosphere of the stronghold matched the tension inside her chest. She didn't know when the rival clan would strike, but she knew they would. Desperation made people bold, even more so for a warrior culture like the Varkun. She walked to her workbench and uncovered her tool. The metal caught the morning sunlight in a soft glow. She checked its joints again, listening to the smooth clicks as the parts moved. Everything was in place. Everything was aligned. She wasn't sure why, but she felt the need to prepare it one more time. Hours passed, though it felt much shorter. The sounds outside grew louder. Footsteps. Orders. Machinery powering on. The stronghold was bracing itself for impact. But her workshop remained quiet, isolated from the chaos. She paced back and forth, glancing at the door every few minutes. The silence ended with a sudden knock. Lyra froze for half a second before answering. "Come in." The door slid open, and Rokma stepped inside, his expression serious but calm. Unlike the other warriors, he walked without the heavy clatter of full battle armor. His movements were controlled and silent. "Your workshop is quieter than the rest of the stronghold," he said. "They told me to stay here," Lyra replied. "I guessed as much." He approached the workbench, his gaze falling on the tool again. He studied it closely, his eyes tracing every curve and joint. "I have been thinking about your creation." Lyra waited, unsure where the conversation was heading. "You built it from something important to us," he said. "Something that carries weight in our history." "Yes," she admitted softly. "Then why show it to them before it is revealed?" he asked. "You must know they would mock it." "They mock everything," she said with a faint shrug. "It doesn't matter." Rokma's eyes softened in a way she hadn't seen before. "But it does matter to you." Lyra hesitated, then nodded. "It used to. Now it only matters whether the tool works. Nothing else." He studied her face for a long moment. "You remind me of our old warlord." Lyra blinked, surprised. "In what way?" "He also was quiet," Rokma said. "Calm, focused. He believed that strength was not always loud." He touched the edge of the tool carefully, respecting it. "You shaped part of him into something new." Lyra lowered her gaze. "I didn't know what it was at first. When I learned, I didn't know if I should continue. But the material was perfect for what I needed." "And what do you need?" he asked. Lyra met his eyes, steady and serious. "A tool that adapts, one that moves when I do, one that works with human reflexes and with Varkuan durability." Rokma nodded slowly. "A bridge between species." She hadn't thought of it that way, but the description fit. Before she could respond, a deep horn echoed through the stronghold. The sound vibrated through the walls, rattling the tools on her shelves. Rokma straightened immediately. "That is the outer alarm," he said. "The rival clan has reached our borders." Lyra felt her heartbeat quicken. "How close?" "Too close," Rokma replied. "They move faster than expected. We must gather in the courtyard." Lyra grabbed her tool instinctively, but Rokma raised a hand. "Jorvac will not allow you on the field," he warned. "You must be careful." Lyra drew in a deep breath. "I understand." Rokma gave her a thoughtful look. "Stay near your workshop. If the defenses fail, this area may become unsafe." He left quickly, the door closing behind him with a heavy thud. Lyra stood alone again. But this time the silence was not calm, it was filled with tension. She walked back to her window, watching as the Varkun warriors rushed toward their positions. The sky above was changing color as energy shields began powering up, spreading faint blue light across the horizon. She watched for several long minutes until something caught her eye, movement on the distant cliffs. Small shapes, almost like silhouettes, approaching with purpose. The rival clan. Her mind raced. If the Varkuan defense lines were positioned the way she remembered, they were too far to intercept quickly. Their patrol units wouldn't reach the enemy in time. The central shield generators were also slow to activate. All of this formed a pattern she had warned them about. The stronghold was vulnerable, and they still didn't see it. She turned away from the window, heart pounding. She didn't want to break Jorvac's order, but she also couldn't stand by while the stronghold fell. Lyra stared at her tool. She placed her hand on it, feeling the smooth, curved material warm beneath her palm. She closed her eyes and whispered, "It's almost time." Another alarm sounded outside, louder than before. The walls trembled faintly. She stepped toward the door. If the Varkun refused her help, then she would help anyway. Not for reward, not for acceptance, but because she knew something they didn't know, something they were about to learn. Humans did not need to be large or loud to change the outcome of a battle. They only needed to act at the right moment. Lyra tightened her grip on the tool and opened the door. The moment she stepped into the hall, the stronghold shook again, and the real conflict began. Lyra moved through the hallway as the stronghold trembled again. but she kept her steps steady. She knew the Varkun were disciplined fighters, and even when danger approached, they rarely showed fear. But today the tension in the air felt sharper than usual, almost like the entire stronghold was holding its breath. As she approached the courtyard, she could hear voices rising, orders being shouted, armor plates clinking, and the heavy thrum of energy generators struggling to activate. When she stepped into the open area, the scene before her was full of motion. Dozens of warriors stood at the ready, forming defensive lines. The air shimmered with a faint glow as shield barriers slowly spread from tall towers. She recognized the process. The barriers would take several minutes to fully stabilize, and until then the stronghold was exposed. Jorvac noticed her the moment she reached the edge of the courtyard. His expression tightened. "I told you to stay in your workshop," he said sharply, striding toward her. Lyra held his gaze. "I know. But I also know your defenses are not ready." "We are prepared for anything," he replied, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. She didn't argue with him. Instead, she pointed toward the distant cliffs beyond the stronghold walls. Shapes were moving there, slow but steady. The rival clan was getting closer. "Your patrols are too far to intercept," she said calmly. "The shield is powering up too slowly, and your supply lines are exposed on the eastern side." Jorvac blinked, surprised she knew that. "You have been observing more than we allowed." "I observe what is visible," she replied simply. Before he could respond, another deep horn sounded. This one was longer, lower, almost like a warning growl. The Varkun warriors stiffened. Rokma appeared beside them, stepping out of the shadows near the command tower. "The enemy has reached the outer ridge," he said. "Their scouts are scanning the shield. They move with purpose." Jorvac exhaled slowly. "Then we hold our ground." Lyra watched the warriors form tighter ranks. For all their pride, for all their stubbornness, they were brave. Their discipline was admirable. But bravery alone didn't stop danger. She looked at Jorvac again. "Let me help." "You cannot fight our battles," he said firmly. "I'm not here to fight," she replied. "I'm here to fix what is broken." Rokma gave Jorvac a meaningful stare. "The human sees what we miss," he said quietly. "Perhaps we should listen." Jorvac hesitated. Lyra could see the internal conflict on his face. His pride was a barrier, but responsibility weighed heavier. At last, he gave a small nod. "Speak," he said, "but do not forget your place." Lyra stepped forward, scanning the courtyard. "Your energy grid is unstable. The shield will flicker when the pressure increases. You need to stabilize it manually before they test it." Jorvac frowned. "And how do you know this?" "I repaired your generators 3 weeks ago," she said. "You used the old components again. They will fail under sudden load." Rokma nodded. "She is right. I remember the report." Jorvac looked annoyed but concerned. "Then what do we need?" Lyra pointed to 2 warriors standing near a control node. "They must adjust the power channels and restart the synchronization cycle. If not, the shield will collapse." Jorvac barked an order, and the warriors rushed to the node. Lyra watched as the energy levels shifted, flickered, then slowly stabilized. The glow from the shield became brighter, more solid. A sense of relief spread through the courtyard, but it was only the first problem. Lyra turned to the eastern platform. "Your supply path is exposed. If their scouts reach it, they can cut it off." Jorvac clenched his jaw. "We will send a small unit to guard it." "You won't have time," Lyra said. Rokma stepped closer. "What do you suggest?" "Use the transport lift to move supplies into the inner warehouses before they approach. Even if they reach the path, they won't find anything useful." Jorvac gave another order. Warriors rushed to move crates and machinery toward the lifts. The courtyard buzzed with renewed purpose. Lyra felt her heartbeat steady. She wasn't sure how much she could help, but she knew that even small improvements mattered in moments like this. A sudden shout made everyone turn toward the southern wall. A young warrior came running down the ramp. "They are closer than expected," he called. "Their scouts are signaling. They may be preparing something." The courtyard rustled with unease. The rival clan was known not only for strength but also for unpredictability. They didn't always charge with brute force. Sometimes they tested defenses, waited for weakness, and moved with unusual strategy. Lyra exchanged a look with Rokma. "What is their usual tactic?" she asked. Rokma folded his arms. "They observe. They test. They wait for the smallest mistake." Rokma folded his arms. "Then they're watching us right now," Lyra said. Jorvac frowned. "For what purpose?" "To see if you panic," she replied. The Varkun warriors shifted uneasily, but Rokma nodded in understanding. "Patience is also a weapon," he murmured. Lyra looked around, noticing everything: the tension, the shield stabilizing, the warriors forming new lines. She knew the rival clan would continue testing the stronghold. They weren't here for a quick victory. They sought an opportunity, and opportunity often came from misunderstanding. Lyra turned to Jorvac. "I need access to the observation tower." He looked doubtful. "Why?" "To see what they see." For a moment, he didn't move. Then, he finally nodded, though reluctantly. "Rokma will go with you." They moved quickly toward the tower. The climb was long and narrow, with stone steps winding around the inner walls. When they reached the top, a cool wind swept through the open observation deck. From here, the world stretched wide, dusty mountains, winding valleys, and the rival clans' distant shapes moving like shadows across the ridges. Lyra watched them closely. Their movement pattern was slow, but intentional. They stayed far enough not to seem aggressive, but close enough to apply pressure. They weren't testing the shield. They were watching how the Varkun reacted. "They want you to overreact," Lyra said softly. "They want you to make a mistake." Rokma nodded. "That is our enemy's nature." Lyra took a step closer to the railing. She thought about the Varkun mindset: pride, honor, strength. These values guided their decisions, but sometimes they created blind spots. "We need to show them something they don't expect," she said. "And what is that?" Rokma asked. "Calm," she replied. "If they think you're confident, they will hesitate." Rokma considered this. "Our people understand battle, not patience." "Then today they need patience," Lyra said simply. They descended from the tower and returned to the courtyard. Jorvac approached them immediately. "What did you see?" Lyra pointed toward the warriors. "Tell them to hold steady. No sudden movement. No unnecessary orders. Let the rival clan think you are unbothered." Jorvac raised a brow. "That goes against our instinct, but it works against theirs," she responded. Rokma nodded. "The human is right. Their clan thrives on emotional reaction." After a tense pause, Jorvac turned to address the warriors. "Hold your positions," he commanded. "Show no fear. We wait." The courtyard became still. The warriors adopted steady stances, not charging, not scrambling, just waiting. Lyra felt her breath slow. This was the right choice. Minutes passed. The rival clans' shapes stopped approaching. They lingered at the edge of the ridge, watching. Then slowly, they began to retreat. A wave of relief spread through the stronghold, soft as a breath. The rival clan had decided not to risk confrontation, not today. Jorvac inhaled deeply, as if awakening from a long tension. He turned to Lyra, his expression shifting between disbelief and respect. "You read them better than we did," he said quietly. Lyra gave a small, tired smile. Sometimes understanding behavior is more powerful than strength. Rokma stepped forward, looking at her tool still strapped to her side. "Your creation. Will you show its true purpose soon?" Lyra rested her hand on the device. "Yes. When the moment is right." Jorvac studied her carefully. "The clans mocked it," he said, "but I believe there is more to it than we understood." "There is," Lyra replied. She looked toward the distant ridge where the rival clan had disappeared. She knew they would return. And when they did, the Varkun would need more than battle instincts and traditional weapons. They would need something new, something they had never imagined a human could create. and the time to reveal it was coming fast. The stronghold settled into a strange silence after the rival clan retreated. It wasn't peaceful, not truly. The air still carried tension, like the storm wasn't gone, just waiting above the clouds. The Varkun warriors stayed alert, their armor still strapped, their eyes scanning the cliffs with caution. Even the younglings did not chant today. Something had changed in the atmosphere, something almost invisible but deeply felt. Lyra sensed it too. As she walked through the courtyard, many warriors stepped aside to make space for her. They didn't stare with mockery this time. Some watched her with curiosity, others with a respect they couldn't yet admit out loud. It made her uneasy. But she didn't slow her pace. She knew this calm wouldn't last. Rokma found her near the workshop entrance. His expression was serious, but not unkind. "The enemy will return," he said quietly. Lyra nodded. "They will. They weren't retreating. They were observing. They will try again," he said. "Perhaps in a different way." Lyra glanced toward the distant cliffs. The horizon lay still, but she imagined those distant shapes reorganizing, planning their next step. "That's why we need to prepare differently," she said. Rokma looked at the tool strapped under her clothing. "Is it time?" Lyra didn't answer immediately. She touched the device gently, feeling its solid structure beneath the cloth. For months, she had shaped it, refined it, turning something the Varkun had discarded into something entirely new, but it had never been tested outside her workshop. "I think so," she said at last. Rokma gave a slow nod. "Then I will gather the elders. They should see this with their own eyes." As he walked away, Lyra felt a wave of mixed emotions: anticipation, worry, hope, and something that felt like responsibility. She had kept this tool secret because she feared they would misuse it. But she also knew they needed it now, more than ever. She went to her workshop, closed the door, and unwrapped the tool. It gleamed softly in the dim light, its curved plates shifting slightly as if sensing movement. She ran her fingers along the spine-like central core, remembering how she had cleaned every ridge, shaped every angle, and fitted every joint. The material had been part of a once powerful leader, now transformed into something new. A quiet knock interrupted her thoughts. "Enter," she said. Jorvac stepped inside. His armor had scratches from earlier preparations, and there was dust on his boots, as if he had walked the entire stronghold several times. "You're preparing something," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Lyra replied. He watched her tool for a long moment. "I admit," he said finally. "I judged you too quickly. Your warnings, your suggestions, they saved this place today." Lyra blinked in surprise. It wasn't often a Varkun warrior admitted a mistake. "Your people are strong," she said. "But strength takes many forms. Sometimes it's quiet." Jorvac gave a small huff. "Quiet strength is unfamiliar to us. It doesn't mean it isn't useful." Silence settled between them for a moment. Then Jorvac gestured to the tool. "Will you explain it?" he asked. "You'll see it soon," Lyra said gently. "I promise." Jorvac didn't push further. Instead, he simply nodded, something respectful in the gesture. Then he left the workshop without another word. Lyra exhaled slowly. Everything was moving faster than she expected. She picked up the tool, holding it with both hands. It felt perfectly balanced, perfectly familiar. She stepped outside just as the elders arrived near the courtyard. Rokma stood beside them, his posture formal. Jorvac joined them, along with several respected warriors. The rest of the stronghold formed a wide circle around them, watching silently. For the first time since she arrived on their world, Lyra felt every eye on her without mockery, only waiting. She stepped forward. Jorvac spoke first. "The human has built something," he announced. "She claims it has purpose." Rokma added, "We will witness that purpose now." Lyra held the tool in front of her. At first, it appeared small and unassuming, just as it had when they mocked it. The younglings at the back stared with wide eyes, Whispering quietly, she inhaled deeply. Your people saw this as useless, she said, her voice steady. You judged it by its size, by its shape, by the fact that a human built it. A murmur spread through the crowd, but no one interrupted. This tool was made from something you left behind, she continued. Something that once symbolized strength. Something you forgot. Rokma stepped forward slightly, his eyes locked on her. Show them, he said gently. Lyra nodded. She pressed her hand against the central joint. The tool shifted with a soft, mechanical sound. The metal plates unfolded and reconnected, creating a slender, flexible structure that extended like a living limb. The crowd gasped softly. Some warriors took a step back, unsure what they were seeing. Then Lyra shifted her stance, and the tool adjusted to follow her movement. It curved, locked, and extended with perfect coordination. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It wasn't meant to strike or destroy. It was an adaptive extension of her body, part tool, part instrument, part innovation. She held it above her head and twisted it gently. The plates responded instantly, shaping into a stable frame that emitted a soft, protective hum. Light filled the structure, faint but steady, a portable shield frame. Rokma's eyes widened. Jorvak's jaw tightened in shock. You created shielding technology, Jorvak breathed. A personal shield, Rokma added softly. One that moves with the user. Lyra lowered the shield and let the tool fold back into its compact form. Your shield towers are powerful, she said, but slow. And they cannot protect individuals if the main grid fails. This device can. It responds to motion. It adapts to pressure. It protects without weight. The elders exchanged stunned glances. One of them finally stepped forward. His voice slow. This is unlike anything we have seen. Lyra nodded. Because you do not look at creation the way humans do. You build for tradition, for ceremony, for intimidation. Humans build for adaptability, for survival. Rokma stepped closer. You forged this from our old warlord's remains. Yes, Lyra said quietly. Not to disrespect him, but to honor what he was meant to be. A protector, a leader. Someone who understood strength was not just force but purpose. The courtyard fell into deep silence. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the younglings, the same ones who once chanted at her, took a small step forward. One of them spoke timidly. It is not useless? Lyra smiled gently. No, it was never useless. Jorvak approached her slowly, his posture respectful. Human, he said. This creation. It will change how we defend our stronghold. Lyra nodded. It can help you. If you allow it. 2. Another elder stepped forward. His voice carried weight. We mocked what we did not understand. But today we see the truth you turned, something abandoned into something that can save lives. Lyra lowered her gaze. I only used what you gave me. Rokma raised his chin. You reshaped what we threw away. That is a kind of strength we never recognized. His eyes softened. Until now, the stronghold shifted around them. The warriors, once proud and dismissive, now watched Lyra with a new expression, respect, mixed with a hint of awe. The elder nearest her stepped aside and made a gesture rarely used toward outsiders, a gesture of acceptance. From this day, he said, you are not only a visitor in our stronghold. You are a contributor, a creator, a symbol of adaptation. Lyra felt warmth rise in her chest. She hadn't come here to be honored. But hearing their words, seeing their expressions, she realized something important. This moment mattered, not just for her, but for them. The Varkun had always believed strength belonged only to the loudest, the largest, the fiercest. Today they learned strength could also be quiet, thoughtful, and shaped by hands that once seemed small to them. Rokma placed a hand over his chest. Your tool will help us face what comes next. Lyra nodded. And I'll help too. Jorvak finally allowed a smile. A real one. Human. he said. You have changed how our people see your kind. Lyra looked at her tool, its folded form resting lightly in her hands. Maybe, she said quietly. I've changed how you see your own kind, too. The crowd murmured, gently, agreement, wonder, perhaps even gratitude. And for the first time since she arrived on their world, the stronghold felt different, less like a place she was trapped in, more like a place she belonged.